Welcome everybody to another episode of Principal Soup. I'm Jamal Crook,
I'm Zach Shuttler.
and today, Zach, we are talking about leading through the unexpected. Some would call that a crisis, but let's go ahead and define what we're talking about today.
You
And
mean
really,
you mean unexpected things happen when you bring like a couple thousand, adolescents into a building along with like adults and parents, things can go awry.
oh, I would have never imagined that there would be nuance in those things that will create anything for me to have to deal with the unexpected.
I mean, there's a reason why the reality TV shows are so popular. When you bring just a few dozen people together in one house, things go out of control. Imagine bringing, 2, 3,000 students together along with all the teachers, the parents, community members, and you're bound to hit some unexpected bumps on the best days.
On the best days. And
On the best days.
I think it's important to note that there's so much that we have to do every day just to keep a kid safe. Not only that, but just the nuances of things that we have to think about as leaders that most people in some industries maybe don't have to think about.
Hmm.
So, let's define, what the unexpected is, or even a crisis. And it's really anything that disrupts normal operations and demands immediate attention.
And I think those are different depending on your role. The principal job is much faster paced. You're on the ground. You're in the weeds with the students and the teachers each day. The superintendent role, the unexpected can sometimes be larger, but oftentimes you have time on your side. You have space. You have distance. You're not as emotionally connected at times, which gives you the advantage of seeing things from the 10,000 foot view compared to the principal role. So they are a little bit different. One's not easier than the other, but they can be different depending on the circumstance.
Right. So, I think for me, as I was thinking about this concept, it brought me back to what my English teacher told me one time. And my English teacher eventually became like my supervisor in a sense. And when I became an ADVA coordinator, I was, just getting into leadership and trying to figure out who I was. And I was like, if I mess up or if something goes wrong, she stopped me. She was like, it's not if something goes wrong or if you mess up, it's how you respond to it. You don't control if it goes wrong or if you mess up, but it's how you respond to it. So let's talk a little bit about that. How should we respond to things when they don't go as planned?
I think a lot about what Dr. Doug Lindsay, he was a former psychologist for the Air Force. Have a chance to know him the last few years. He echoes the refrain that you can't be prepared for every situation, but you can prepare you for every situation. And I'll repeat that again because it is a little bit nuanced. Is that you can't be prepared for every situation, but you can prepare yourself for any situation. And the unexpected is always going to arise. We can have all the different pamphlets and protocols in place that we want, but not every situation, very few situations are going to be cookie cutter. So, how do we prepare ourselves to be able to take in information, to discern what's valuable versus what's not valuable, to handle the human component of a crisis or unexpected event, and to navigate through that? Because you hit it on the head. We can't control much, but we can control our response. And by investing in how we prepare ourselves for any situation, allows us to best handle whatever situation arises. And the situations that we're dealing with as principals and as superintendents, they're much bigger than meeting a number at the end of the month. We're talking about students, we're talking about our staff, and in some cases, we're dealing with very serious issues, whether it be hurricanes, which you deal with. It could be an active shooter situation or an active threat situation. Those come up from time to time. Bomb threats, a variety of things that, while in most cases you can navigate those safely, and many times they're false alarms, In the moment, you don't know that. In the moment, you have to take it as serious as anything that you're encountering in your career. Um, and there's a lot of emotion that goes with that once you de-escalate the situation. So not only calming yourself down after the situation's over, but repairing and helping others, get through, these unexpected circumstances that come up.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What are some things that I can do as a leader to make sure that I'm most prepared for these situations? You talk about that personal work. Give some examples.
I think in our last podcast, we talked about, you can train for three things. You can train your craft, you can train your body, and you can train your mind. This falls into all three of those things. How can you train your mind so you can regulate your body? How can you train your craft so you at least have a rough outline on how to handle circumstances? I would say one of the things that prepared me most for my role as superintendent, one of my first major disruptions, there was a bomb threat, and this was a bomb threat that had a little more substance to it than your run of the mill, bomb threat. Long story short, there was a situation where somebody wanted to rob a location in our county. So the person called it a bomb threat to the school that was the farthest east of where they wanted to rob the location. So the reason for that, they wanted to send as many authorities to that school so there'd be less authorities on the western portion of the county. So we had to evacuate the school. It was October. We're in Ohio. It was one of those October days to where it wasn't 65 degrees. It was like 82 degrees and the sun was beaten down. So we evacuated the building. We placed everybody in the designated location, but it was hot and we weren't fully prepared to have water and everything ready for the students until we made the decision to dismiss. We had the authorities arrive with the K-9 unit, and I wanted to set a great example for leadership. So I walked the building with the K-9 unit. I walked each corridor with them, and I remember when it was done and everything was okay, the 911 dispatcher said, "Hey, Zach, can I talk to you for a second?" I said, "Sure, yeah, absolutely." And he sits me down and he says, "We really appreciate what you were doing trying to set the example here, but this is not how you lead a crisis situation." I said, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, I'm going to give you this website. It's called Incident Command Training, and you need to be in a designated location away from everything, so that way the police and the K-9 unit and 911 knows where you are. They can contact you. You can have access to all the information in real time. You can't be walking around with us just to show, that you want to be in the weeds. Like that's not how this is done effectively." So I took the incident command training. It was pretty intensive training. I mean, I had to read a lot, I had to study a lot, and understanding that when there's a crisis, being in charge of the crisis and managing the crisis, I do need to be in a location where people can report directly to me. They know my location. They know that I'm available to disseminate information, to receive information, to essentially be what it says, the command center for managing the crisis. So when I was a young superintendent, I thought managing or leading the crisis was being, shoulder to shoulder with the police, looking for whatever we were needing to look for. And I'll never forget the 911 dispatcher pulling me aside and saying, "Hey, here's the website for this national training to handle incidents. I think you need to take it." And it changed the way that I lead and manage crises now.
And I think it's so important to, as I'm listening to you, to communicate that as well to staff, because I think there's a part of preparation that when you are going through things, and so that they know and understand the reason why you might not be shoulder to shoulder with the authorities or trying to go look for the bomb. I remember my school caught on fire in the first year, and the fire truck showed up and all of the professionals, and I didn't take the incident command training, but I just knew that when the firemen showed up, and the fire was over there, I needed to get away. And somebody asked me, I was like, why are you so calm? I was like, well, because the professionals are here to deal with those things. It would be counterproductive for me to go and try to see what happened with the fire. They're going to tell me everything that's going on. I just need to be away and let them do their work, because that's what I would want if it were the other way around. If you know, if it were my zone of genius per se.
And the reality is, you can't be everywhere. I mean,
Right.
we're not Batman. I mean, you can't be everywhere. A great story, although some people might find it unrealistic, but this happened. We were trying to pass a bond. So myself and my treasurer, we went to the county seat to meet with the county auditor to talk about the bond and the millage and all of this. Pretty pretty normal stuff on a normal day, but we're 50 minutes away from campus, so we're not on campus. And I get a phone call from bus dispatch, and bus dispatch tells me, "Hey Zach," and she's panicked. Something's on fire. I said, "What do you mean something's on fire?" She goes, "I think it might be the football field house. It looks like it's on fire. There's smoke billowing out of that area." And I said, "Are you sure?" And she said, "Not 100%, but there's definitely smoke from that area. I've got to go." So I contact, kind of going through the incident command response. Okay, I've got somebody in charge. I'm gonna contact my maintenance supervisor. It's not the field house that's on fire. There's a truck that's on fire, a student truck that's on fire. A lightning bolt hit it. A lightning bolt hit it. We have video footage to show the lightning bolt hitting this truck, and the truck just goes up in flames. So I'm 15 minutes away from campus, but we have a protocol in place. I call the maintenance supervisor. I send him down. He clears out the building. Thankfully, the student was not in the truck. There was nobody in the truck. I then contact the elementary school principal, because the field house is located very close to the elementary school. He goes and he checks on the situation. He gets all the students who are going down and ready for practice in a specific location. He waits for 911 to arrive and the fire department to arrive. Long story short, we have this very unique situation where, in the fog of war, we don't know exactly what's going on right away. We just know that something's on fire. We find out it's a truck. We find out later that a lightning bolt hit this truck. I'm not on campus, which is perfectly fine, because we have our maintenance supervisor, we have our building principal, who's closest in proximity to that building, on standby to help assist with any situation. I stayed in that location in my truck, so that way I was present to take phone calls in real time, so that way we could resolve the problem. Number one, first and foremost, make sure everybody was safe, and then kind of move forward from there. It wasn't a situation to where I needed to get in my truck, I needed to drive 115 miles an hour down the highway, where I then couldn't take texts, maybe couldn't take phone calls. Maybe I put myself and others in jeopardy because I'm not thinking clearly, I'm driving too fast. It's press pause, take a deep breath. Yes, we have a situation, but I can't do anything about it, 15 minutes away. But there are people that are equipped to handle these things. And the principal that I called to handle it, he was a former EMS, person. So he understood how to handle the situation. So just knowing who you can contact to help you get through these things.
So we just talked about the more spontaneous crises, right? What about things that we can see coming down the future, like in our forecast? I know for me, I just recently, my school just went through our district went through a boundary change, and I got about 300 extra students, and the first semester was interesting, and I think it's what you make it. There was a lot of we did a lot of things that we did in my first 2 years that I thought that as a third year going into a school, we really wouldn't have to deal with. It was almost like a reset of that first semester. Now, we learned some things along the way, and we had to figure some things out, but I think from that, there are some things that I've done that I've conceptualized that I would do and that I do now when it comes to things that I can forecast. And that's number one, is really defining any problem that we have. I know early on in the school year, I realized that I had a class imbalance, and I made sure that we identified the problem. and we came up with viable solutions to that problem, which is one of the next steps. But let me go back before. The second thing that I do is I make sure that I listen to all of the direct stakeholders that are involved. I think it's very important to understand how that problem is impacting people at any given time. And then from there, I develop a plan. And then after that, you monitor and adjust the plan as necessary. And I think that fourth piece is so very important because a lot of times we'll try to fix a problem and we'll say this is the only solution. I've learned that when you first start out with a thing, you don't understand all of the solutions until you really get into the nitty gritty of the thing because practice drives theory. Theory doesn't drive practice. So it's very important for us to be able to adjust and be open with people about, hey, we're going to monitor this and then we're going to adjust if necessary. And if I come back to you with a different plan, it's not because I'm crazy or I don't know what I'm doing. It's because this is new and we're learning along the way.
Yeah, I mean, some crises are a little bit more predictable, than others. You mentioned, your class imbalance. For us, a couple of years ago, I stepped in as the interim superintendent. Then shortly thereafter, the full-time superintendent, and we found out that we were, because of our test scores, we were going to be essentially audited by the state, our educational practices. And small school district, in rural Ohio, that was a big deal for our staff. So triaging, getting your administrative team together, seeing how can we roll this out, how can we communicate this to folks, because we don't want people to panic. But at the same time, we want, with our language and with our actions, we want to create a healthy sense of urgency to, address the issue and to show that we're skilled and competent in our practice, because everybody wants to be that, and we want to be seen that way from those on the outside. We're going to talk about in a future episode on the relationship between the principal and the superintendent. In most instances, the people closest to the problem are the ones more apt to have viable solutions. So getting the team together, talking to the principals, hey, here's where the state's saying that we're deficient. What do you think? Based on this information, what are the steps that we need to take forward? The principals, when I relay that information to them, that's a call to action for them to then sit down and talk with their teachers to see, like, hey, here's what the state's saying. Here's the situation that we're in. What possible ideas or solutions do you have? Because if you're living it day to day, you probably have some options on how it can be fixed. It doesn't mean that all those ideas are going to be great ideas. And it doesn't mean that we have to take your idea and implement it as, handed down to us. Because as leaders, and this is where you have to be very honest up front when you seek feedback, hey, we're going to take these ideas. We're going to try to come up with some solutions based on your ideas. We're going to include you in the process. We might not use all of your ideas, or your ideas might not look exactly like they were spoken to us, but you're going to be part of the process.
Right. And I think to that point, it's very important to lead in a way that's going to cause everyone to be effective around you. And I'm not saying lead from a place of comfort, but I'm saying once you make a decision, it's okay to lead that decision until new information comes that will allow you to be better. Because I think sometimes what we try to do as leaders is make people happy. And no matter what we do in those, especially in those challenging situations, we are not going to make everyone happy. There's always going to be someone that has an issue with the way that we approach things. And most of the time, it's coming from a place of their own comfort.
It's very similar in every industry. What do they say in like professional football? When the team's playing poorly, the most popular person on the team's the backup quarterback. Even if everybody on the inside knows that backup can't really play as well as the starter.
Yeah.
That's the easy solution. When things are going sideways in a school district, the easy solution is, well, the superintendent doesn't know what they're doing, or the principal's incompetent, or it's very easy to come up with a simplistic solution that most of the time is wrong. Simple solutions to complex problems are very easy to say.
Yeah.
They usually don't hold a lot of weight.
Right. So it reminds me of a story of a man and his donkey, right? You can imagine. So, this man is going on this journey and he's with his son. and they have this donkey, and the donkey's on the journey with them. So they're walking next to the donkey, and some people walk by and they're like, "Man, look at those fools. They should be the old man should be on top of the donkey. He should be riding, and the young man should be walking next to him." So the old man hears it. He gets on the donkey, starts riding the donkey. The They walked by some more people, and they was like, "Look at that old man making that poor young boy walk." They're like, "What's wrong with him?" Guy gets off the donkey, puts his son up there. They continue on their journey. They walk by some more people. Man, that young man needs to learn some respect. He is making that old man walk. He should be ashamed of himself. So they both get on the donkey. So they're riding donkey. Some more people come by. They should be ashamed of themselves. They're making that poor donkey. They're making that poor donkey, carry all that load. So the old man is like, "Man, what do we do?" He says, "So we're gonna carry the donkey, right?" So the old man and the young boy, they're carrying this donkey, and they're about to come up to a bridge that's over some water. And there some more people on the bridge. He was like, "Look at those idiots carrying that donkey. Like what are they thinking?" And the old man hears it and he like slips, and the donkey goes over. So moral of the story is, you're not gonna make everybody happy. Don't lose your donkey trying to make everybody happy.
Don't lose your donkey trying to make everybody happy.
You could imagine, right? Don't lose your donkey trying to make everybody happy.
I
Because
think the
you
only thing we can do as leaders is communicate and try to be transparent as we can be. Transparency is a complicated word because when you're dealing with crises or threats or anything, even if it's something like planned, whether it's class size or budget issues or what have you, until you yourself as the superintendent or the principal know all the information, that you can't share a half baked cake. So you're going to cause more discombobulation and more confusion trying to be incredibly overly transparent when you don't understand everything quite yet. And one thing that I have realized when it comes to issues with like student safety, even if I don't fully know everything, it's always better for me to get the information out because when
Mhm.
disruptions take place on campus, if we do have something like a bomb threat or if somebody's made an online threat, even if I don't know all the information yet, I'll be honest with the parents knowing I don't know all the information, but just to send out a broadcast saying, "Hey, based on my communication with the local law enforcement, we do believe school's safe today. We'll have an extra security presence, but I want you to be informed so you can make the best decision for your child." I
Mhm.
found that to be effective in those instances because with social media, a lot of these threats, a lot of these disruptions are posted on social media. Students and parents know anyway, and a lot of times they're waiting to see what our response is going to be, and it makes them feel these situations are so tough. So at ease isn't even the right word. It makes them feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that the administration's on top of it. And also creating that relationship to where if you see something on social media, if you overhear something in the chat world, share it with us so we can address it. So trying to be as transparent as we can, but not causing more panic, but also letting parents and community members know that to solve some of these complex issues, we need help from everybody. And if you hear something, say something, and then we'll let you know that we're on top of it, even though we can't promise, we're handling
Right.
it the way that you would want it handled.
And I think that becomes much easier if you're honest. And there's a level of adequate transparency as well, but with that communication piece, I think it's also important to stay calm and collected. And when you mention that term, it's not just being in a state; it is allowing your brain to stay on. And I think for a lot of leaders, sometimes we'll get into these situations, and sometimes we'll freeze as well. But if we keep our minds on and we keep the activity in the front of our brains going, it's going to allow us to think clearly enough to send out that communication.
That's
Um,
where preparing yourself, like Doctor, just the things that you have to notice about you internally to calm yourself down. All right, you feel your blood pulsing a little bit. You feel the headache coming on. Okay, let's breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. All right, let's take about a 30-second walk around my office. Let's pull it together. because we all know. I mean, I can rattle off people by name, and I'm sure people have things about me that might agitate them. But the folks when they walk into the office and they never make a situation better, and they're not doing it on purpose.
Mhm.
They walk in like they just walked through a hurricane. You know,
Big and little.
yeah, papers are flying everywhere. Like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? This is gonna be a disaster, and it never makes it better. And the downside is it makes things worse for everybody else because if I see Jamal stressed out, even if I think he might be overreacting, now I've got to expend energy trying to calm him down, and then I've got to calm myself down because your pace, your speed coming into that meeting elevates my pace and my speed,
Mhm.
even if I'm trying to stay calm.
Right. So it's also, if you know that about yourself, then it's also making sure that there's enough distance between yourself and those people. Because, when things are going bad, there are people I don't call and I actively avoid because I need to stay focused. But I think even in that as well, prioritizing people over processes. No matter what it is that we do, I think that it always comes back to people. And COVID taught us that. We had technology, we had all of the different things that we had going on. And we thought, and the world thought that we could go to online schooling. And the parents, at about 2 weeks in, they were ready to send all the kids back to school. They didn't care about any kind of disease or anything like that because we realized that we need each other at the end of the day. And it always comes back to us. So making sure that our plans don't run our people off the edge of the earth. And that includes our students, our staff, and our families as well.
One thing you said there, it's about people. At the end of the day, it's about people. I was watching a special on the University of Mount Union. They're a Division III football powerhouse, and they were talking to their legendary coach. He's retired, Larry Karras. And Nick Sirianni went to Mount Union. He's the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles right now, and he uses the same process. They call it the PFP process. So when you want to get something done and it's a big situation in a game, you focus on what player do you want to have the ball, what formation is the best formation for them to be in to get the ball, and what is the play that's going to be the most effective. Players, formations, plays. But if you look at the PFP process, it always starts with the player. So when we're dealing with adversity in a school district, when we're dealing with disruptions, when we're dealing with a crisis, it comes down to, who is the player, who is the principal, who's the administrator that can help solve this situation. What protocols do we have in place? What's the formation? And then what play can we call to make it happen? But it always starts with our personnel, with our players.
Right. And again, it goes back to people. I think another thing that's going to be extremely important, and I mentioned it before, we can't box ourselves in. We have to balance the now with where we're going and be willing to adjust. And I want to say it because a lot of us administrators are type A people and we thrive on perfection. And there's nothing that we're ever going to do that's going to be perfect. So don't focus on making a perfect plan the first time. Focus on making a plan that's gonna get it started and use it as a starting point.
One thing we know in any walk of life, you can become very married to your plan, especially if you're the only one that created it. And many of our actions are subconscious. And when you become married to a plan, it's hard to change because if you change the plan, you're also admitting that you were wrong.
Right. And I think something that you always say, focus on what you can control.
I try. It's hard.
Focus on what you can control. Listen, if there's a part of the crises or the disruption and you cannot control it, focus on what you can control. I remember when my mom was sick, it I had to remind myself as much as I wanted to do all these things and direct the doctors that I wasn't a doctor.
Mhm.
And I had to figure out what it was that I could control in those situations. I could control myself, my presence, how I communicated. But when it came to the things that were beyond the realm of my control, I had to take a back seat to the natural consequences of the world. And I think that's important for us as leaders to understand. As much power and authority as you have in your pen, there are some things that supersede the power of our authority in our pen.
I think in all these situations, it goes back to the serenity prayer. Real wisdom is knowing what you can have an impact over and what you can't have an impact over, and being able to discern the difference in between, and that can lead to a really quality life. But I think I think we talked about this before. The most common phrase in the Bible is some iteration of "Do not be afraid." I think God knows that we have a hard time with this one.
Mm-hmm. And just going back to what you said to your preparation before, during times of crisis or disruption, our most rehearsed actions come to the forefront. I think your boy said that, Mike Tomlin. I got that from him, but it's true. When things are going great, anybody can stand in there and be, deal with the successes. But when things are starting to go awry, our most rehearsed actions come to the forefront. So now is the time to begin to prepare yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually, because this job takes a toll on all three of those things. And we have to remember that no matter what decision we make, no matter what the circumstance is, our leadership is going to have a lasting impact on our school and our community.
The situations that come about, they don't care that you just handled the previous situation. You need time to process. The
Mhm.
next situation's coming, just like the wave in the ocean. So
Mhm.
how can you prepare yourself to ride those waves and not let the waves crash over top of you?
And in my closing statement, I think of all the things that I've ever experienced that have been, crises or just the unexpected, every time I always look for things that bring us together. And if you will allow it to, it will make you and your staff, or you and your family, or you as an individual strong.
Looking forward to our next episode, Jamal, where we dive more into what allows us to solve crises, the relationship between the administration, specifically the superintendent and the principal, because a great principal um, can be a superintendent's best friend.
All right. Until next time.